It's really interesting that as the playoffs expand, we're really kind of contracting who can win this thing.
Yeah, I think that we don't really know. It really you could pick a couple teams and say, hey, I really like this guy, I like that guy. I mean, I love what's happening in Cincinnati. I got to admit, I was wrong. I had them not making the playoffs, Doug, before the season started. I didn't see it, but I'm wrong.
Why did you – again, like help me with – because the way I look at things is I get it, but did Pittsburgh make you think that they were going to be better? Did you think Cleveland was going to be better?
I just thought, if you remember last year, it's not like they were 13-3. I mean, they were, I think, 10-6 is what their record was. So they got in, and then, they won some games, and things worked their way. Patrick Mahomes throws a pick in the AFC champ. Remember, they were losing big time in the first half, and Mahomes throws a pick in his own zone and his own end, which allowed them to win on a field goal or whatever. So a lot of things went right, and they played fine and all that. But I've seen teams do that, and then the next year not make it, not make the playoffs. And I was looking at them saying, man, a lot of things went right. Are they going to do this again? And they start out 0-2, so I'm feeling like, okay, I've been covering the NFL since 1987, and they're 2-4, and maybe I am right, and maybe I'm going to be right, and Joe Burrow proves me wrong and has played really well and has a chance to – could he leapfrog, Doug, and win the MVP if they win these next two? They have 2 games against 2 good teams, and if they win those games and he plays well, could he win the MVP?
Could he? Yeah, I think people make up their mind on things, though, right? They make up their mind on, Pat Mahomes, who's been really good.
Well, my only argument with Patrick Mahomes, and I'm not – look at who he's beaten and the games he's put up against some of the worst teams in the – I mean, it's mind-boggling. And you got to play who's on the schedule, Doug, and I'm not trying to poo-poo it. But if you really take a close look at the teams that he's had all the success against, they're really bad teams.
Okay. I mean, wouldn't you say the same thing about Jalen Hurts? I mean, they've played an incredibly soft schedule. Like, are we going to?
Yeah, but they've only lost one. They only had lost one game with him, which is a little different than I had it a couple weeks ago. I had the breakdown. I'd have to find it again, but it is a plethora of bottom feeder defensively, you know what I mean, and and any struggles he had were against the better team. I'm not saying he's not in the conversation.
Beat the Chargers twice, beat the Niners. Granted, Niners quarterback situation was Garoppolo started that game, right? And against the Niners, he had 3 touchdowns. So I'm going to disagree with you in terms of have they beaten bad teams? Yes, but they've beaten good teams too. That's why they're still in competition for the number 1 seed.
I think he's obviously in the conversation, but I really like what Joe Burrow has done and their climb out of the hole that they were in. And remember, he started with the injury, right? What did he have? An appendix removed, and he wasn't in training camp. They got off to a bad start. He threw some picks and had turnovers in the first part of the season. It's been impressive. And Jalen Hurts, when you add the rushing touchdowns with the passing and just what he was able to do. This is a guy who, Doug, I don't know where you were, but there were a lot of people. Remember, we had Anthony Gargano from Fox
I didn't
Radio.
think he'd be the starter next year.
Okay, he was awful last year. Awful.
He wasn't awful. He was awful in the playoffs. He was just limited. And I think there's a lot of people who think. And what they've done is Shane Steichen's been smart. He's taken a bunch of notes from what Oklahoma did. And, Oklahoma, by about mid-season, his 1 year there, they were frustrated because at the time he wasn't going through progressions. He wasn't as good in that offense as they had hoped. So they have designed dropbacks into runs, and that's what Philadelphia does. And it's incredibly hard to defend because, when you have a quarterback as a runner, obviously that means it's 11-on-11 football. But no one else really has played this way. I guess with some exceptions, Baltimore, but Baltimore's offense is different. But in terms of designed runs on dropbacks, and the question becomes, at what point will people adjust? What will people adjust to it? But you're right. I didn't think Jalen Hurts was good enough. Most people didn't think he was good enough. I'm not sure the Eagles thought he was good enough. And he's both improved. They've played a soft schedule, and they have a dominant team. So it's really hard to tell just how good he is until we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that is a factor, but it's a regular season award, and I think he's got to be in that conversation. And before he got hurt, it reminds me kind of like Carson Wentz. You remember Carson Wentz was poised to win the MVP and then got hurt almost the same time frame, and then Brady came in and won that MVP.
Oh, won the league MVP?
Yeah. It was almost identical when Wentz was rolling that year that they wound up winning the Super Bowl.
It's weird because with the exception of like the Bengals thing, now they're obviously 11-4 and they've reeled them off. But for the most part, if you look at the standings, it's about where most people thought teams would be. Right? There's very few surprises there. If you really stop and think about it, I mean, the Broncos are the lone kind of surprise. But if you had started the year,
a lot of people had the Broncos going to the Super Bowl. They thought add star quarterback, add water, stir, and you're going to the Super Bowl. And that division was supposed to be the end all be all, right?
Yes. And the Raiders have been disappointed. Now, look, if you're fair, the Raiders have lost these leads that you should. Part of it does speak to they do have some talent, and they had a couple weeks there where you didn't have Waller, you didn't have
still Josh McDaniels awful. Look at his record. I mean, when he started as head coach of Denver, I think they won their first 6 games. Was it first 6 games, right? But since then, if you just look, it has not been good, Doug. And I won't even mention that he left the Colts at the altar when he reneged on the deal that he had struck with them. So I think he should be fired, but they won't.
Wait. You think he should be fired for the Raiders?
Oh, yeah.
Why?
I just think they have too much talent to be as bad. And they lost 3 games this year where they had 17 points or more leads, and they lost those games.
Yep.
I don't think it's ever happened in the NFL, and it shouldn't happen. And then there's games where Devontae Adams has 2 passes for 15 yards. How? How is that possible?
Look, I think the idea, though, that you fire a guy if he doesn't know what he's doing. I don't know why they were in press man coverage against the Rams. That game they absolutely should have won. That was silly. You're on your own 23-yard line, defensively 15 seconds to go. Keep everybody in play.
Right.
Keep everybody in bounds, make a tackle. Game probably, maybe you have to defend 2 plays. They don't. But I don't. First, Mark Davis is not firing him. He's too invested in it.
No, I get that.
I also think that a lot of what happened last year, everything went right for Rich Bisaccia. This year, so many things went wrong. But he's going to.
Look at the record, Doug. After his, okay. I'm just saying, in Denver.
Look, he was not good in Denver.
He was not good in Denver.
There's no defending it. It was a decade ago,
right?
But there's no defending it. The point is that if you keep cycling through coaches, then you have to keep cycling through defenses and styles. Remember,
but I hear that argument all the time. So just because a guy's in place and it's wrong, just keep it because you don't want to change. I think that doesn't make any sense. Sometimes, you know what, when it comes to coaching, you need to make a change. I'm going to give you 2 examples, one in baseball and one in the NBA. Steve Nash needed to be fired. He needed to be fired, Doug. And when Kevin Durant first said it, people went, the inmates running the asylum. This is ridiculous. No. Steve Nash was not a good coach. He probably should have been fired, Doug, when they got swept by the Celtics, right? When he couldn't make any adjustments. He couldn't give Kevin Durant any
What
open
adjustments?
look.
What adjustments can you make when you don't have players?
Okay, here's my point. Look at where this team is now. Would you say that was a great move to get rid of him and do something different in Brooklyn?
I definitely think a move had to be made. I don't know the exact correlation. They're doing the same stuff. I think Steve got beaten down by everything that went down.
Okay, here's my other one.
He was not good. He was not good enough, and Jock is. But let's not act like people are celebrating the Jock Vaughn hire.
No. And the Nets finally made the right. They didn't go get Udoka. You remember that? They were going to do that, and people told them not to.
No, they wanted.
I know
to,
they did,
or the owner wanted to, and they're like, yeah, you can't.
And it wound up working out for him. But the other one was the Phillies this year. people balked when they got rid of Joe Girardi like 30, 40 games into a long baseball season, and something wasn't right there. Rob Thompson comes in, and they go to a World Series. Bryce Harper thoroughly endorsed it, was like, dude, we need a change here. Like, we got talent. Something's not right, and it works out. So all I'm saying is I get it. You're soaked in with money. You gave Josh McDaniels this contract. It's the first year. You don't want to change everything. But sometimes you got to look at it and say, it's just not working. It's just like you didn't give Nathan Ken Hackett another year to say, well,
there's a difference there between not able to get the plays in on time and the home fans are counting down on the play clock. And
that's classic, though.
And then having leads and have all different sorts of ways to lose these leads and lose games. The problem is, one, I think most people think that Josh McDaniels knows what he's doing. Doesn't have a perfect team, trying to figure out what he's got. That thing was such a mess. Remember, the Raiders, they didn't just change all their coaching personnel from last year. They changed the front office, and they changed the front office on the football side and the non-football side. Like that is an organization in complete turmoil and transition.
Yeah, but Doug, here's where I disagree, and I'll push back. If it was just a mess because the front office and the changes or whatever you want to say, and they're not up by 17 and it's just a whitewash and everything's discombobulated or just a mess and you just can't figure it out because too many things have changed, I'll buy that. But to play well enough to get a 17-point lead in these games in the NFL and cough them up, I'm going to point to coaching, that the players didn't know what to do, didn't know how to finish out the games. The coaching wasn't good enough. And given his history and what happened in Denver and everything, I would just say